one of the first things that I'm considering when I'm starting a new project, and I'm also starting to think of this entire project from the perspective of a design system, is ensuring that the foundations are here and they've set in place and that I can easily expand upon them if the project is going to require it as I move on. So obviously, before this step, there would be a lot of exploration. We would all understand the goals of this project. We would understand who the audience is, what problem or problems we're solving, and why. So there is a lot of work that happens before this that influences all of our decisions. But when it comes to those foundational things that we are considering when we're building a design system, there's a couple of things, and of course you can expand upon them, but it would be colors, typography, iconography, spacing, and some other elements that are very crucial to define. Maybe some effects that are going to be used and how, and also things like elevation, if that's going to be in here. It's connected to effects, but I'm kind of seeing it as its own thing. Elevation is connected more to like shadows and the way that things are going to be flowing out of the screen, while on the other hand we have things like effects where we're using blurs or some other things to influence the style of our UI elements. And we also have things like border radius, and all of those things need to be considered when we're building a design system, because we need to be aware of those rules so that we can consistently apply them to all of our components and to ensure that we are kind of not breaking them. It's not going to be on purpose, but still it can happen when you're designing. So you need to be careful about those things. So let's start things off with color. I do like to start things off with color. Some people start off with typography. It really doesn't make too much of a difference, but what we need to consider is creating enough shades so that we have a really solid starting point, but also not so many shades that we have too much and that we're not going to use some of those shades at all. If you want to learn more about color and how all of those decisions are made and what comes into play when you're thinking about colors and typography, again, take a look at our courses on those topics. In here, we're just going to look at Figma's perspective of how to build the design system from those foundational elements upwards and so on. So when I'm thinking about color, I'm most often going to start off with just one, and I'm playing around with something like this where I just kind of edit and have the main primary color, which is the color that's very connected to the brand. Most often it's going to be basically any kind of hue, but this color that we're going to use for the primary purposes needs to ensure kind of consistency and accessibility across our interface. So what I often see, especially with mobile apps and web application, is that the brain color is something that's kind of dark enough and colorful enough so it's not like there in your face screaming, but it's something that you can easily notice when you need it in your interface. So I'll play around with the blue area. It's kind of the most common one. Again, this color wouldn't just be like, oh, this is my decision for the color like this. It would more be connected to the brand and ensuring that this is accessible enough if I'm using maybe white text over it, or if it's a lighter shade that I'm using like dark text over it, and it still works for accessibility reasons as our primary color. I do like to have some kind of a saturation in here. So when we're working with HSB system like I am right now, this is connected to the hue in here. This is connected to the saturation. So how vivid the color is, how much of the color you can see. It's this area in here. That's the most saturated part, while this area in here on the left side is the least saturated part. You can work with HSL too. You can work with hex, RGB. It really depends, and I'm gonna go through all of the benefits of those in our color course and explain why I prefer something like an HSB when I'm working in UI design areas. But yeah, the final thing is the brightness. So how bright the color is, from the most like saturated and bright tone to the darkest or like black. Okay, so we have something like this, and let's make that our main color. One strategy that you can use to kind of build a color palette is to have the darker shade and the lighter shade in somewhere in here. And to do so, one of the ways that you can build a darker shade is, of course, go more towards black. And as you're adding black, you should also be adding more and more saturation to ensure that that color still is kind of visible there. There are other tools that you can use. There are plugins in Figma that can help you create different like tints and shades. There is also a website. I'm not sure if it's like Make Tints and Shades or something like that, but if you put it into Google, it's going to work, and we can add a link below this video. Basically, you just enter one hex code inside, and it's going to create you different shades that are darker and lighter from that main tone that you've put in. So what I like to do is I do like to increase saturation a little bit. So if we have something like 80, I'm going to put it to 90. If we have lightness at 70, I'm going to make it a lot smaller, something like 40. And I do also like to play with hue, and I'm going to make it just a little bit more purple because it just kind of appears more vivid as you move towards that kind of edge. So in here you can see that it's still kind of blue, but it has that undertone of purple, which kind of makes it a little bit darker in our eyes, and that's how we perceive different hues. While in here, when it comes to the lighter one, we can shift it towards a more cyan tones, maybe something like this. Don't go overboard with it. And when it comes to lighter tones, I've noticed in all my experience as a designer that most often I'm going to need more of those, as they're more easily noticeable by our eyes. Like if there is a slight shift in saturation and brightness, we perceive it a lot easier than we do tones in here. On the darker side, so I do like to make these a lot lighter. So let's go with something like 96. And when it comes to saturation, you're going to lower it a lot. When it comes to colors that are very, very bright, you want the saturation to be just barely noticeable. So something more in the lines of like 4 is going to be 3 or 4 is going to be enough. So I'm going to leave it at 4 right now. What I like to do with colors, especially like the primary ones and the neutral tones like grays that we're going to use in the interface, we need a lot of those. So with this one, I'm going to introduce 2 shades in between the two. So like this, let's drag this around, and let's put another one in here and in here. So it's what, 7 shades of our primary color for our primary palette. I think that's going to be enough, especially in the beginning. I might even need less, but I do want to have that at least. Maybe I can go around and just have 6 or something. I'm going to see what I like. Because as I said, I usually need more of these lighter tones than I need the dark ones. Honestly, since I already mentioned it, I'm probably just going to do this. And I'm probably going to erase one of these. So what I do in here, I duplicate this rectangle and I copy the color from here. And I put the opacity of this color at 50. So it's kind of gradually shifting from this to this to this. And it gives you a really nice like transition from one color to the other. And that only works if you've taken into account things like saturation and even maybe hue if you want to shift that. Most often, if you're analyzing different mobile apps, you're going to notice that all of them are using the same hue. That's completely fine. I explained my reasons why I sometimes like to shift the hue just a little bit. But if you take those things into account and just place one rectangle over the other, you're going to get that shade that you're looking for. So I'm just going to copy this and make this 100%, and the one below it I'm going to erase. I click tab, basically it moves from, so just to demonstrate, I was on layer 9, which is this one that's now colored like this because I color picked the initial layer with a 50% overlay over it of this other color. So it kind of creates a mixed color between the two. And since I have that layer selected, I can just hit tab and it's going to move me in here to the layer below. And I'm going to erase that layer. And now we just have 3 layers in here, not 4 of them. So that's one of the ways I kind of like to work with layers without actually having to tap in this area. So what you're going to see in here is that we have a lot more shades on the lighter side that we need to introduce. It can be a manual process. Sometimes I just kind of go in here and kind of move more towards this area to ensure that I'm kind of going towards the darker tones. So basically I'm following something like this when it comes to the line. As I'm introducing more darkness, I'm also introducing more saturation. But I'm gonna do a similar process like I did in here. I'm just gonna paste this over, add it to 50%. And then I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna color pick it, I'm gonna go inside, and I'm gonna erase the layer below. Now I can do the same thing in here, copy this layer, place it over, put it at 50%. Oh, sorry, because this one should be this actually. Because I need to go from this tone to this tone, I wanna place this over, put it at 50%. Color pick it, place it at 100, and that should be enough. And then I'm gonna take this one, place it over this, put it at 50%. And you can see like sometimes it's not gonna be exactly 50. Like these two look too similar to me. So I'm gonna go back, figure out what else I need to do to ensure that it looks a little bit better. I'm gonna take this layer, place it over, and maybe I want to use 40% or 30%. Like as I'm introducing darkness, it's getting with these lighter tones, the differences are a lot more noticeable. So sometimes you're gonna play around with those opacity to get to the shades that you really like and you think are gonna work with this project. So maybe I'm gonna keep it at like 35%. Go in here, copy this color, put it at 100%, go below, erase it. So now these two are looking very similar. Maybe that's a problem, maybe it's not. Let's go back. Yeah, the 50 just seems like it's too much, but 50 is too much, maybe 40. Yeah, 40 is kind of a nice balance between these two. So again, it's kind of a go in here, try it out, look if it works. If it doesn't, erase it, and so on and so on. But it seems like it's getting darker every time I kind of erase it. Like this, it's not the right tone, so I'm trying to figure out why that happens. Here, 100. Is that really the 100? I'm just gonna go in here, copy the hex. It's gonna be this, erase this one, place the hex in here. Yeah, I don't know. But it's a good thing that we have our eyes and we can kind of notice those things as we're trying them out. Okay, so there's already a copied shade over this. I can put it at 50%, looks too much. Something like 30. Or even 20. Honestly, with my experience with color, something like 25 is going to be best, because we can use this for the lightest shades of backgrounds, and then this can be some kind of a separator line. So as you see, when I'm thinking about color, I'm already starting to plan like how and where am I actually going to use this color. So I'm assigning meanings to all of these colors as I move forward. So I'm going to copy this. It's going to be this hex in here. Let's paste it. Okay, perfect. So what I have in mind is this is going to be our main color that we're going to have for all of the primary palette. This is probably going to be used for hovers and things like that. This is going to be used in areas where we have like light blue backgrounds, but maybe we want to have some kind of a accessible enough contrast for the text or elements. When it comes to this, it's probably going to be for some disabled states, and then we're going to use these three. Maybe we're just going to need two, maybe all three. Right now I'm going to keep them. I can erase one if I don't tend to use it in the UI. And maybe this one can be used for some kind of decorative purposes at some places, or like some accents or some, I'm not sure if it's going to be enough contrast, most likely not for any kind of descriptive text. So I see this one as a background color, this one is some kind of a separator. But right now, this one is the only one where I'm not really seeing maybe a use case at the moment. It doesn't matter for now. I'm going to keep it at 7. So what we've learned in color styles, we're going to go in here. We're going to have our primary palette, and we're going to call this a 500 because usually with 500, that's kind of the middle main shade of this color. This one I'm going to call primary 700, and this one I'm going to call primary 900. Now, since I do understand that maybe there can even be a darker tone than this, maybe I could have called this 800, this one 600 or something. Right now, I think it's fine as long as we let our developers know if we're making any changes and kind of document those changes as well. We should be fine. So if this is 500, we have 400, 300, 200, and 100. I think that's going to be amazing. In here, we have primary 400. I'm just going to copy these to make the naming a little bit easier. 300, 200, and 100. I'm going to go in here and kind of organize these so they're really just following like from darkest to the lightest, or from the lightest to the darkest. Depends on what you prefer. And we can now either erase those, or we can create a documentation frame for this. So I'm going to create an auto layout, Shift A. I'm going to introduce some padding into this, or maybe it's better to just keep it because I can already see that we're going to need some other things in here as well. I'm going to call these like primary shades or like primary palettes. And we can use something like 18, 24. I hope you're following along and kind of doing everything in here, because I don't know if just like watching this is going to be enough for you to really for it to really click. I'm created this in here, and maybe what other thing we might need is also some kind of hex codes below this for documentation purposes. So what we can do is go in here, make this a lot smaller, maybe make it regular. Right now I'm not really worried about all of those details, and you would go in here. If you turn it into a list like this, it might be a little bit easier to copy the hex codes, and you can just paste them like this. I'll make the width of all of these the same. So we have 3, 4, 5, 7. Select all of those, turn them into an auto layout, ensure that it goes like this. 20 in here, 24. Let's lower it to 20. And now all of those shades are working perfectly with this. Let's create another auto layout in here to make this a little bit smaller so that all of the hex codes are really close to the palette. Let's go in here, copy the hex code. Again, another thing when you're working with design systems is in here you might actually add a description of what this color is going to be used for. As I've said, I already have some kind of a meaning assigned to all of these shades based on my experiences previously, but for now I'm going to keep it open because we're going to have to kind of test out all of the shades in our screens as we're designing to ensure that it's working and it's going to be enough for everything that we're doing, and also to be able to do those things justice. So like ensuring that if I actually say that this is going to be used for that, then I'm kind of already using it in those areas. So as you've seen, this is an evolving thing, and we're not just kind of doing everything and kind of saying, oh, that's a check mark, that's done, that's complete. We're taking all of that, knowing that this is going to evolve with what we're actually going to use this colors for in our interfaces. So now that we have something like this, I'm just going to add some padding to make it a little bit easier to digest. And I'm going to add the fill of just white. And in here we have our primary palette. Again, a lot of these things are just like optional ways that you can document things. And we can call this primary palette as well as the frame. Okay, so besides that, we're gonna need another line, and there are a couple of more that you will need to design. And as this is kind of an evolving area that we're gonna continuously build upon, now you've seen me create a primary palette for our design system. We need to create a neutrals palette, so something that we're going to use for a lot of the backgrounds. A lot of the backgrounds in UI are actually just kind of shades of gray from white to black, and if you want to learn more, colors course is going to cover that in detail. Otherwise, I might just be rambling in here about colors and typography for hours and hours to ensure that like you know everything there is to know about those topics from UI design perspective. But that's not what this course is about. It's about teaching you how to use Figma efficiently to ensure that all of your design work is the best as it can be. So I'm gonna ask you to either find different shades for a neutral palette online and just kind of bring them into Figma and create them as styles like we did with this primary one, or to try and build a neutrals palette on your own. I'm going to create a neutrals palette. I'm going to create a palette for errors and maybe success messages. And I might introduce like a secondary or a promoted palette or the accent palette for things that I really want to kind of pop off the screen, for maybe some really promoted call to actions and so on. So yeah. I'm gonna leave this video at here, and the next lesson is basically gonna be your assignment, where you need to create a neutrals palette, maybe something for errors, maybe something for success states. Like, try to assign meanings to the palettes that you're gonna create and what are you gonna use those shades for. And I'm gonna have some kind of a video where I'm quickly building all of those things, but I don't want to bore you with just like repeating the same things over and over, because hopefully from this video you've learned the logic of how to create it. Now it's up to you to actually apply it. So in the next lesson you're going to have the assignment and my kind of speedy walkthrough of everything without narration. And then in the next video, actual video where we're going to work on typography. So see you there.